Hey, Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time this evening on this episode. If you could please tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So, my name is Jessica Shrout, and I'm a marketer by trade. I run my own agency, Circle 3 Branding, and I created that from scratch. And that's what I'm doing today, full time.
And what does Circle 3 do?
We do marketing and brand strategy primarily for businesses that are in the waste and recycling industry. We do have a few clients that we take on from other industries, some retail, agriculture, and education, but my bread and butter is definitely the waste industry.
And so, what made you want to go into that industry? Is because it's a very unique industry it's my first time actually discussing.
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons. One is that waste is, and I'm sure some of the executives in the industry are going to scream when they hear me say this, but it's fairly recession proof. So no matter what, people are going to be producing trash and there's going to be recycling that needs to be taken care of. That'll ebb and flow, but it's not like, say, working in entertainment where that just fully stopped for, during the
Yeah.
COVID pandemic. This trash is kind of eternal for better or worse. So there was that. The other fact of the matter is that I could do it. I had been in, I guess, working adjacent to the waste industry for a number of years when my career with that company came to an end. And I realized there had been opportunity there. So I'm like, okay, I can work in this industry. I know enough to, well, let's say I haven't driven the trucks, I haven't run a route myself, but I know enough about it to ask the right questions for my customers to help them arrive at the right answer to do whatever they need to do for the brand. And then the third reason was that it's a niche that I can occupy that I'm fairly unthreatened in. And by that, I mean, there are
Oh.
tons of marketing agencies out there, but for the most part, trash is a very unsexy industry. It's dirty, it's gross, it's kind of repetitive in the sense of it's not like the fashion industry where there's new things.
Mhm.
It's not like the pet products industry where there's always something cute and you're looking to get great photos of amazing dogs and cats. It's not something that a lot of people want to do. So not only do I know the industry to a certain extent, no one else wants to really compete with me for it because they want to do cool stuff and then move on to the next cool project that's in another industry, which is great. That's a lot of fun. And I'm fairly protected by the ups and downs of the economy because trash continues to be made for better or worse. So it's a really kind of safe, fun, quirky industry for me where I can specialize and set myself apart because of that. And it's always a conversation starter anywhere I go.
I can imagine. And so, when it comes to marketing and branding for waste companies, what is a unique approach you have to take when it comes to those type of companies versus vice you dealing with something that's more sexy?
Yeah. Um, there's a bit of a differentiation that needs to be made because a lot of, let's say, um, I'll call them civilians in this case, people who are not in the industry, just general, like people who have a home or an apartment and they're just throwing stuff away like their normal business. They kind of view trash like a commodity in terms of they're going to choose the lowest bidder to do their trash service. If you even have a choice, sometimes it's your municipality that makes that choice for you. And they put the trash out on the curb or in the bin, and all they care about is it gone on time? And does it continue to be removed on time? They don't really want to think of it beyond that. And there's this whole fascinating industry that's really big on green practices and conservation that the two of us as people that throw things away and use their services really don't think about. So there's this whole marriage between the waste industry and the environmentalism movement that is kind
Yes.
of happening under the radar that I think needs to be promoted more. And so we're fighting against people who don't really see it as something to care about. And we are also working with trying to combat bad information. So there are lots of people who are getting really excited about doing green things and recycling the right way, recycling as much as possible, reducing their footprint. And so you get people who are putting out information to a broad audience because they have a lot of followers, because they are, let's say, influencers, bloggers, or whatever. And sometimes the message is not accurate. So then your local waste company is dealing with the fallout from people saying, don't recycle this or always recycle that. And that bad information will catch up with you eventually when you're paying for your trash service, because they have to add, extra people to sort through the waste, or it takes longer. So costs have to increase. And so there's this sort of ripple effect that you're not aware is happening because of this bad information. So it's the excitement of trying to help people see waste and recycling as a service that they should be actively thinking about, and also combating that bad information.
So yeah, I thought it was just so it's either your small contractor that just handles your, hey, I'm just trying to get rid of the stuff in my house with your small dumpster, or it's the city having the two trash men come in the truck and throw the trash can in there and then go about their day. I didn't know it was an industry to where it was private. Other than maybe the non-profit organizations that are all about being green, that was as far as my knowledge was on that.
Yeah. And I'm not an expert in the business models per se, but there are some companies that are national and they're public, like on the stock exchange, that large. There are others that are specifically run by your municipality, like City of Miami-Dade. And then there are others that are contracted by the city. So these could be the national haulers or local private guys. And then there are the private haulers where they have their own brand, they manage everything, they chase down contracts, they fight for bids along with the big national companies. And then there are some organizations that are two guys and a pickup truck. Mm-hmm. Like that's still a real business model. And it varies so much. And once you get outside of the larger municipalities, you do see a variety. And just where I live, I think I had the choice of at least 2, if not 3 waste and recycling companies to choose from when I moved here, which was new to me. I'd been used to living within city limits where you kind of get what you get based on negotiations through the city and the hauler. So this was like, who do I choose? What do I do? And if you're not thinking about it the way I do on a day-to-day basis, you're just shopping for price, which is fair. Why not choose the lowest price option to suit your needs? That's what we do with a lot of things.
Yeah, it is. Where did you move to?
I moved from Western Maryland and Central Pennsylvania area to Muncie, Indiana. So I went from the mountains to the Midwest.
And so I wanted to pinpoint on something that you said that I think a lot of people need to think about when they start their own business or just getting into entrepreneurship period. And it's finding a niche that you can excel in with limited amount of resistance. Now, I'm not saying if you have a passion, like my passion is finance and real estate. So like that's oversaturated, right? It's a lot of people doing that. But if you don't mind being flexible, or like we talked about a little bit earlier, you may be exposed to maybe even like this episode and realize, you know what, I can do that in this particular niche that is not oversaturated and succeed. Maybe I have to move, maybe I don't. Maybe it's a need that's already needed in this area, but finding a need that is not, I guess you could say, overly saturated, or that people don't realize that they need. Just identifying a problem. That's a big thing about business, right? Is identifying what the problem is in an area that nobody else has solved. So I think it's pretty cool. It's a different take on business that you have. I really do like this. This is refreshing. And so I wanted to break down how do you brand these companies? So we talked a little bit about the strategy. What does B2B and B2C planning mean?
Sure. And you know what? If you don't mind, I'd love to talk about the niche thing too. So if you
Okay,
want
yeah,
to
yeah,
like,
go ahead.
okay. So I have a lot of thoughts on the niche focus, and I like to talk to younger people about planning a career in whatever it is they hope to do, because as children, we're exposed to so few job options. Like you kind of see what your culture is. And you know that the well-paying jobs are doctor, lawyer, performer, athlete, and maybe you could be a teacher or maybe something else in the medical world. Marine biologist was like a big one because I love dolphins. So, you know, this is kind of the thing that all kids want to do, but you don't see how many layers and how many options there are. And I was talking to my nephew when he was entering college, trying to figure out what he wanted to be. And he said he wanted to be a mechanical engineer. And I really thought, well, I know you think that's a well-paying job, and it can be, but I know that's not what you love. And so I was telling him, sure, do the thing that makes good business sense for your financial future. That's fine. Go where there's a need to be filled and a good market for it. And I'll give you another example. I was thinking about going into law school, and I had been accepted into a great law school a few years after I guess the 07, 08 recession. Horrible time to go into law school. It was saturated with students who, you know, several $100,000 in debt, and not a good market to be in unless you had some sort of connection, like you were maybe going to inherit a family firm or something like that, just super competitive. So I opted not to do that because there were just so many young lawyers out and about. And that got me thinking, similar to engineering, that there are going to be so many of those. So how do you stand out from the crowd? Even if you love that field, what do you do that makes you so incredibly employable versus all the other people that you graduate with? And I was telling him, you love music. So fine, go be a mechanical engineer if you want to, but how about you double major or at least minor in music? Because you're doing something that makes you happy. And you might find a way to turn your mechanical engineering into something that is in the music field, which I know would make him much happier than like designing equipment or machinery. So that was my advice for him. And that's the advice I give to every young student that I'm working with is, sure, do the thing that you think is going to give you a stable financial future if that's your goal, but twist it around. Find something that makes it uniquely yours and that few could compete with.
No, I love that advice, and that is what helps. I think going a little bit ahead, but what we kind of talk about the millennials, right? I
Yeah.
think that has been that has definitely been the focus when it comes to millennials, as far as still being me. I don't want to be just another person in the assembly line. I want to be an individual in some way and do what I love.
Well, and we were given bad advice too. Go to
Yeah.
college, study something, and there'll be a great career waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's often not the case. You know, for whatever cultural or socioeconomic factors that we're facing, it turns out that going and just getting a 4-year degree isn't the key to your future because there's a lot of competition. So you have to get creative. And then there is this millennial drive to stay true to yourself and not just become your career.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Plus, I looked up a little fact that YouTube created 250,000 jobs because of based off of how much people are making, the YouTubers are making.
I had no idea. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
equal.
fascinating.
Yeah, as much revenue as the YouTubers are making, it was equal to 250,000 jobs. So, I mean,
Mhm.
that's a good amount of jobs, and I can see why my 8-year-old, he wants to be a YouTuber and
Oh
do
yeah. It's the
Minecraft.
new athlete or performer. You know, it looks like it is a glamorous, fun thing to do, and it might be.
It looks
Um,
fun.
but I mean, have him choose a niche that no one else is doing on YouTube. And that's how a career is made. And it's the same for branding.
Yes, and
Yeah,
so
find a way to differentiate yourself, and it makes the choice so clear for your potential customers on who to trust.
and I guess that's maybe it's a natural talent, is finding the ability to be able to stand apart and not be the me too. And then also still be it's still receptive. Like, oh, that's different. And I like it. Like, I think that's a real skill to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So back to the strategy. What did B2B or and B2C planning? What was that with the branding management?
Well, in the waste world, so B2B is business to business and B2C
Mhm.
is business to consumer. And when we're talking about marketing, people in the industry have different strengths based on the types of clientele that they have. So if I'm doing the marketing for a clothing boutique, there is a certain type of language that I'm going to use for all of the work that I do based on the fact that we are talking to direct end users of the product. So if I was working for Nike, I'm trying to sell you product based on how I think you want to feel about buying our shoes or athletic wear. If I were selling to the boutique itself, if I was a clothing manufacturer trying to convince them to buy the clothing that we make to sell at their boutique, that would be a B2B situation where I'm trying to convince them not how cute these clothes were, but how much money they're going to make on selling them and the quality, and that, you know, these clothes aren't going to fall apart when their customers buy them. So you
Yeah.
can trust us, your brand to look good. And so um, for me being in the industry that I'm in, I often have to code switch and change from my clients who might be working on putting together a really beautiful presentation to go out for municipal bids. So they are technically a business to a business in a manner of
Yes.
speaking, versus trying to teach you as a resident of the city, maybe don't throw away or maybe not put trash in your recycling bin. And here's the education you need to make the right decision without it being like miles over your head and talking about different types of plastics and the chemical composition of them.
Yes.
That's a conversation.
Okay. And so thank you for breaking that down, because it makes sense. You would present your business plan differently to another business than you would a consumer. So if I'm trying to, if I'm breaking this down properly, your B2C is more of the educational side, and then your B2B is more of the persuasive.
Yeah, we could say that. Educational in terms of helping them choose the right service provider for their needs, if we're talking about us as the customer. And also educational in terms of, okay, once you have decided to opt into this particular service provider, here's how to use their service to the fullest extent and get maximum level of satisfaction out of it. Whereas, yeah, with the B2B, it's different. There's a totally different strategy. At the end of the day, the principles of good communication are universal. So it's essentially doing the same thing, communicating this brand story in an effective way, but using a little different flavor for whatever the end goal is. And I like to help my clients analyze when we need to switch things up, and when we need to shift in a different direction in order to achieve their business goals.
And so with all this planning, right, in marketing and branding, how are you managing their budget for them? How is that discussed?
It really varies based on the relationship that I have. So some people contact me just to do one thing, and I call those like my a la carte clients, where they say, hey, we have this opportunity to have a feature written by us and published in this magazine. Can you write it for us? And so that's like a one-off sort of, I'll have this short-term relationship with them where we will do this project, make this ad, write this article, build a brochure, whatever it is. And it's kind of one and done. And I give them the tools that they need, send them on their way, and everyone's satisfied. Others will contract with me for longer term relationships where they are, they perhaps have somebody that is working in sales and marketing and they're wearing just way too many hats. So they know what they want to do. It's just they don't have the hands to do it. So I can be those hands behind the scene, and that person and I can meet and set goals and determine who's going to do what part of this project, and then we collaborate. Others maybe have no in-house marketer at all, and I work as if I were in-house as their coworker, head of marketing. And so I'll collaborate with sales, customer service, occasionally operations managers, just whoever we need to show up for meetings on their behalf to kind of present the marketing side of things. And yeah, and those can be like ongoing relationships that I have for, well, some clients for a number of years, actually.
Awesome. And so also with you also provide market research. How does market research meet audience segmentation?
Oh, that's a good one. So if you don't know who you're talking to, you're kind of screaming into the void and hoping somebody hears it. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a lot out there to distract people. So many platforms, so many things competing for our attention, that if you don't have a strategy and have laser focus to know exactly who your audience is, or who your, say the biggest fish are in the pond that you want to go after, then it can be a bit wasteful of your marketing dollars. You're not getting the best return on investment. And so one of the first things I like to do with clients is really sit down and make sure they understand who they're talking to. And a lot of times I will get a client that says, well, everyone's my audience. Everyone throws away trash, or everyone needs XYZ. And I'm like, do they really though? Like, everyone needs shoes. True, for the most part. But the type of shoes that you are going to sell to a kid playing high school sports are completely different to what you would sell to a 65-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm.
And everything in between, to a nurse or to a mechanic. And so you need to focus on what you offer and who exactly is the purchaser. So everyone in a household throws away trash, presumably. But then the question is, who collects the information and makes decisions in the household? That's your audience.
Okay.
So
I never thought about it like that.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned you have a child.
Mm-hmm.
That child throws away trash, but they're not the one choosing which service provider to take on, if you do have, assuming. So yeah, now eventually we would hope that your child would become a customer of this trash organization. But there are a number of years before your kid will be ready to, have their own place and make those decisions. So I try to get them to step back and say, okay, maybe not everybody. So who are we actually talking to? And then you segment that up further and say, okay, well, in your, let's say more urban areas, the decision maker tends to be this type of person. In suburban areas, it's this type of person, and then so on and so forth, and kind of, I guess, chop them up even further and see how many more divisions we can make, because the more targeted you can get, the more effective you can be. Because, like, let's say we're doing social media ads. You can choose, household income, age, gender identity, type of job that they have, geographic region, and you can really divide it up. That way, the message that you are delivering to the decision maker in this scenario is precisely targeted and doesn't come across as like tone deaf.
Yes.
So that they're actually being spoken to. Because I'm sure you've seen ads where you're like, wow, they did not know me at all. Like, bold of them to try to market to me, but they really didn't know who they were talking to. And that's somebody who really didn't do the right market segmentation.
Awesome. And I've never heard that term before until I was looking at our talking points. And I appreciate marketing because that is the middle point between obviously the customer and then making the sale. That's the reach out. And if we don't have that down packed, then we're just this person with this great idea, hoping people walk up to our building and buy our stuff or ask for our services.
And some people think of marketing as kind of slimy, like we're playing tricks and we're
because
like,
they find it manipulative.
We kind of like fool people into buying these things, and I really hate that, because when I work with brands, one of my deal breakers is don't make me lie for you. It's a personal integrity thing, but it's also some of the stuff that some of my clients do is dangerous work. Like working in the refuse industry is one of the deadliest jobs in the world. The nature of what they're exposed to versus the machinery that they're working on. So I kind of say, let's start off by being completely honest with each other, never putting ourselves in that position where somebody could get hurt or our words could be used against us. So, so there's that aspect from a safety and integrity point of view, but also I kind of view marketing more as like matchmaking.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
yeah, so I'm helping customers find the products that they need and helping brands find the customers that want their services. So I'm just matching up the two. I'm not trying to sell something to somebody that doesn't want it. So
I like that.
I'm not trying to convince you to buy something that would never work for you or would never feel authentic to who you are as a person. So that's
No,
kind of
yes.
my.
And I love your personal conviction on that as far as, hey, not lying. I mean, not only could it hurt your brand, but also it's all about doing right. Yes, it is meant to be persuasive, but I think we naturally all market ourselves. When we're trying to persuade somebody to do us a favor or to date us, or to kind of help me out a little bit.
The dinner that you make.
Yes.
Life is nothing but negotiations.
Yes. And so it's just flipping it into a business aspect. Really, I look at it as just you providing a certain opportunity to somebody that would have naturally not been promoted to them as they were walking to work or, driving by. That's really how I look at it. So with that, what has been your biggest, I'll start off with what has been your biggest lesson you've learned in being an entrepreneur in this niche?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. And I don't think I've ever been asked that before. My biggest lesson, I think it's perhaps that you don't realize how many people out there want to help you and how many opportunities exist if you are just bold enough, strong enough, crazy enough to ask. And by that, I mean, people seem to be naturally helpful and want to allow others to succeed. And I'll say, if you're not seeing that, you might need to expand your friend circle or your business horizons. But asking for advice, checking to see what opportunities are out there. Like I had no idea when I first started. I just came across this by accident. It was a networking thing, actually, that there are small business providers or small business advisors, that are there to help you free of charge. And it's, through state and federal grants. And you can go to these offices and sit down with an advisor for an hour and say, hey, I think I need investors to help me get this business idea off the ground. How do I put together a proposal? How do I do this? How do I access these types of resources? How do I get training on XYZ? And their sole job is to help you reach your goals. And I had no idea that existed. Like I was going to do this by myself. And then I found out I could get one of their small business advisors. So I asked, showed up, and they welcomed me in. And my small business advisor has been a great resource.
Was this through City Hall or something like that?
You know what? I'm going to look and tell you exactly who it is. What I've been learning, okay, it's the Small Business Administration. So it's sba.gov. And they have all sorts of resources and local assistance to find out where your district office is. And, there might be one in your city or one, a little bit outside. You might have to travel a tiny bit, but basically their whole existence is to help people in the United States, get businesses off the ground, help them be successful. There's a whole segment for veterans. There's a whole segment for women-owned businesses. So there's tons of it. So you're looking for a small business development center. And
Awesome. Awesome.
also be kind of like housed within, like if there's like a private business development center, they can also like have offices within that. Like my local office is called the Innovation Connector. And it's a place that has co-working spaces as well as some other business resources. And my small business advisor through the SBA is housed within that. She actually like rents out one of their offices. So yeah, it's a huge resource. And I never would have known that if I hadn't done some sleuthing and kind of hunted down the answers, made a good solid network. So reach out to people, ask what they know.
That is awesome advice for, and please replay this part of the podcast to make sure you get that website that.
Yes, sba.gov. I mean, they
Yes.
even have export advice. So if you were making a product that you knew was going to go over well overseas, they'll help you figure out how to get it there.
That is pretty cool, because a lot of people, it's intimidating to try to start a business, and maybe some people need help. I remember, I think, I don't know if it was before we started recording at the beginning, but we talked about, I had the idea, I just don't know how to get there. And that is like the perfect bridge example right there that can help people out. Yeesh.
Yeah, well, and they can help you vet your idea too. So like, even if you aren't ready to start, like if you're working your day job and you think, I have this idea for this type of business. I don't really know if the market's there or what the competition is like. You can go in there and they'll help you come up with a business plan and figure out like, you know what, maybe my market is really oversaturated for what I want to do. But if I chase this demographic, it opens wide up. Or if I relocate and go to this underserved area, then I can occupy the entire market. So it may not be the amazing experience that I've had with it because each one is run by, a different person serving various types of populations. So don't get discouraged if it's not, the Cinderella story where the fairy godmother's coming down to grant all your business wishes. But use that person to make connections to the people that will help you.
Oh no, awesome. And at least it at least gives somebody a start of in the right direction on what they can
You're
do.
not alone. Yeah, you don't have to Google everything there. I mean, they could even provide, mine will send me books based on what I need to learn about. Yeah, stuff like that, where it's already been kind of vetted by her as like, this is a pretty good resource for, let's say, learning like basic level accounting things. And I don't do my own accounting. Like I outsource that because that's just something I don't need to worry about. But there are certain, let's say, numbers that you need to know about your business to know if you're successful or not. Mm-hmm. And so, she would recommend like, here, read this book. This will tell you what every executive needs to know about accounting. So it's like, okay, brilliant. She has like turned it into the Cliff Notes version for me. That way I'm not getting like an intro to accounting book and, diving through the weeds when I don't need to. So they're good at
helping. You got a mentor.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And my other advice would be that I didn't know going into, but I kind of instinctively did, was build yourself an advisory board, especially if you're just starting out. So like, you think of advisory boards for businesses and you're like, okay, well, maybe, if I get promoted to be an executive level officer of a company, maybe someday I will get an advisory board that somebody will help me appoint and they can like mentor me. There's no rules. You can have one today of people that you trust in business or people that are in your industry to give you feedback. So
this is true.
Like the first week that I started my business, I called some trusted people in business that I knew and said, I know that the waste industry is not necessarily your niche, although for one it was, but I said, I'm going to come to you with questions and need advice. So can you mentor me through this process? And yeah, sure. So, don't wait, build yourself a little network of supporters that maybe aren't your mom, because, your mom might always be supportive of what you do, or whoever that person is in your life that's like always your cheerleader, like no matter how bad you mess things up. Yes. Find some people that'll give you like real talk on, if that was a good idea or not, and how to not do that next time.
Yeah, big cheese because yeah, you always got that one person like, oh, that's a great idea. I support you in every single thing that you do.
Yeah.
And it's like really it was not the smartest idea.
Yeah. And I mean, those cheerleaders are so helpful, but not in every situation. Sometimes you do want somebody to give you kind of straight talk. I'm like, yeah, you really messed that one up this time. Here's what you should have noticed when it was going south, and here's how to get out of that.
And so I spoke earlier about sales and how I suck at it. And so I wanted you to kind of break down to me, okay, your sales, I guess you could say your sales strategy when it comes to like lead generation, advertising, definitely social
Yeah.
media, because that's like that's social media is still in the world of marketing, social media is still new in comparison to how long marketing has been out.
Well, the worst thing is it does not work for me personally because the guys that I'm selling to are not on Instagram or Facebook.
Because
So
that's
it's
not your
very hard for me to
demographic.
use it. Yeah, yeah. So it's knowing your audience, making sure you are talking to them where they are. So if you were talking to young mothers, Instagram might be more your style than LinkedIn. So it's about
Okay.
knowing like where they congregate, which is why it's so important to know your demographic and to target them with great focus. That way you are not just spending all your advertising dollars or all your time trying to cover everything. Just be like really good at the one thing that they're on. So anyway, backing up about sales. I used to think I hated sales. And it was because I was selling things I didn't believe in. So my very first job out of college was sales assistant for an Anheuser-Busch distributor. So I was selling beer. And I hated that job because I didn't like beer. I didn't like having to go into bars and root through people's cold storage to count how many cases of Bud Light that they had and deal with the patrons that were in the bar at like 11:30 in the morning. It was not a good vibe for me. And I kind of went into the rest of my career thinking, gosh, I really hate sales. I don't love it. I feel like I am trying to get people to buy a product that they don't believe in. And so I'm trying to it felt sleazy.
Right.
And part of that was because the demographic or the geography that I got assigned to was in an impoverished part of the state. So there was pressure on us to sell the higher end products because, the company made more on those. But these people just wanted the lower end types of beers. Plus, my company had recently purchased the territory from another distributor that I think went out of business due to retirement. Like it was a happy ending for them. But the
Okay.
customers were very loyal and saw us as like these usurpers coming in and like, so it was never a good relationship that we had with our people in that part of the state. And so it always felt like I was just fighting. It felt like combat all the time, just nothing but conflict over what we had to offer. And oh, our old guy offered us these prices. I'm like, yeah, that was like 10 years ago. It's changed. But like people were very loyal. So fast forward to my most recent job, I got to see, I guess, a more professional level of sales happening and
Mhm.
got to understand the relationship building that they did. And it still seems like really intimidating and a tough market. Like, I don't know if I could make that my full-time job, like to live or die by how my sales performance is. Although I guess I kind of do now. But today I view it more as that matchmaking thing that I mentioned earlier, that I'm trying to see if a potential client needs what I have and if what I have fulfills their need. So really, I'm approaching people and trying to help them self-diagnose their problems so that at the end of the day, they realize the only logical choice is me. And that does take some guts to get out in front of people.
Yes. Yes.
And I credit that to, and I told my husband this once, I told him, I don't think anybody's ever told me no. Like and this was back, I don't know if I read something somewhere or listened to a podcast that it was talking about all the barriers that people face in business, like women in business in particular, or people of color in business. Like there are so many more barriers and so many times when you get shot down for promotion or told you can't do this or this isn't going to work out for you because of XYZ. And I
Mhm.
told my husband, wow, I must be really blessed or have some sort of beautiful life because no one's ever told me no. Like I can't remember a single instance where a teacher said, wow, you're not good at that. You can't do this, or you can't do XYZ, or this isn't going to work out for you, or a business mentor kind of saying the same thing. And my husband said, oh no, people have told you no. You just don't hear it when they say no. And that was like a lightning bolt moment because I was like, oh my gosh. And he didn't mean it in the fact that I don't listen to people, but that no is not the worst thing that I can hear from somebody. Like I
No.
go into things assuming that no is the status quo. So people like will try to pitch what they're selling and think, oh my God, it's going to be the worst thing ever if they say no. They were already going to say no, like that, because they didn't know about you. The answer was always
Yes.
no. All you can do is get a better answer. It can't possibly be worse.
No, I like that. I like that thought process. And
Yeah.
back to the, I guess, the persuasion, but um, I like that thought process. I do. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I just try to keep it
Rejection
really,
is hard.
I guess. But what I think, so for me, when somebody says no, it usually means they don't understand what you're doing.
Okay.
So you didn't tell the story well enough, or there's not enough budget, or not enough, let's say, human power to pull something off. So they might be like too focused on something big that's going on right now, and they really can't dedicate time to whatever it is
Yes.
you want them to do. So I rarely, well, let me back this up. When I work with somebody, like if I bring on an employee or somebody that I'm collaborating with, like my pet peeve is never tell me no. I want to know no because. And I want to know no because we don't have enough time to get this done, or no, the budget is too small, or no, XYZ. And that helps me wrap my mind around it's not just a rejection, it is an explanation of very practical limitations. But then I can figure out how to work around, or maybe cut my losses and say, okay, I was barking up the wrong tree for this. Like I need to refine my strategy because I was clearly asking somebody for something that was beyond their capability of giving me at the time.
Yes. And the best comparison I could think of, based off what you broke down to me, is you ever heard of door knocking when it comes to wholesaling? People knock on people homeowners' doors for foreclosures, and
Yeah, man,
so
that is scary. I could not do that job.
I've talked to a few wholesalers. I've interviewed a few. One of my favorites is Kevin Cho. Don't remember what episode he is, but I'll put in the details. But he was knocking on doors, and he had a whole script that he memorized. And sometimes before you even get anything out, people would be like, get out of here, curse him out.
Mhm.
But one thing that between talking to him and it was another wholesaler I was talking to, you do get people's attention if you say, hey, I would like to help you. Not, hey, I heard you about to get foreclosed on and I'll buy the house from you. But then there's like no win for them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and
and
you've made
so,
them feel bad about a situation that's, probably embarrassing,
oh
difficult.
yeah, for sure. Especially coming from a stranger. Like, hey, stranger, how do you know I'm in this situation? Period. Don't
Yeah.
know who
Oh my
you
gosh.
are. I'm probably already irritated. But when you find a way to help them still, and I'm not sure the details, but there are some ways that people are able to they were able to buy a foreclosure from the people that owned it, and then was
Mhm.
able to resell it back to them in a way that they could afford it. So rearrange the mortgage because now I own
Oh.
it. So I'm assuming that you'd have to probably do this by buying it in cash. Usually, and that's usually how wholesaling usually works. You buy it in cash. So I buy it in
Huh.
cash, and I put you on a seller financing mortgage to where you can afford that new rate. That way, you helped me, and I helped you situation. And so it seems like that's how you're proposing it. This telling the story the better. is the key. Because you're right. Sometimes it's like, oh, that did not come out right. I meant to say it like this. So that way, because in my head, it made a lot of sense. And I knew you was going to say yes, because who wouldn't have said yes to how I had it planned in my head? And then when it comes out my mouth, it just like, oh my God, that was horrible.
Yeah. Well, and the other aspect of it that just occurred to me is really about knowing the value of what you have to offer and respecting yourself. So, as I've said before, not everybody's going to be your customer. And I meant that in terms of telling my brands that. But as a business owner, you need to understand that there are people that can't afford you. And that's okay. And sometimes you're going to pitch to them and they're going to say, no, the price is too high. And it's like, well, really, are you just going to cut your own prices to meet that? Or are you going to try to refine your strategy to get in front of the people who can afford what you have to offer? And there are tiers to everything. I mean, there's a difference between Walmart shoppers and Target shoppers. And you can tell that walking through the store. And they don't try to cross over into each other's territory. I mean, although they're selling roughly similar goods,
Yeah.
they know who their audience is and they respect the brand enough to continue to play in that arena. And you have to do the same for yourself when it comes to sales, that sometimes these no's that you're getting aren't rejections because that there's anything wrong with you. They're not the appropriate fit for you.
No, and that makes perfect sense. And it allows somebody to hone in on how they need to pitch whatever they're trying to market. And so the second to last question, and this is the one that we were giggling about before we started, your business 3-circle branding. Why did you call it that?
Okay. So it's technically circle 3 branding.
Oh, circle 3. Yeah.
Sorry. But okay. So this is a somewhat long, convoluted story, but bear with me. I really enjoy brands that have layers of meaning to them. So when you think of circle 3, it's a little vague. You can kind of ascribe whatever meaning you want to it at first. But back when I was looking for options, I was trying to make a connection between trash and what I wanted to do with it, and some sort of nod to something in literature, because I'm a big fan of reading and literature, and especially mythology, where everything's very symbolic. So I was thinking back to what I'd studied in my undergrad years, which included mythology and another class on Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy. And this is, you may have played the game Dante's Inferno or had some sort of connection to that, but this is basically the very, very long poem where Dante is describing hell, purgatory, and heaven. So basically whatever happens to you in the afterlife based on what you've done in your mortal existence. And you may have heard of this of like, oh, this is like the 7th circle of hell or some other sort of reference. And the 3rd circle of hell happens to be described as a garbage dump. And I thought that was really kind of fun, and it was a good literature reference. But it has a bit of negativity to it, because that's where the people who have, I guess, pursued the sin of gluttony are forced to spend eternity, because they treated their bodies like a garbage dump. So then their eternal punishment was to live in a garbage dump. And I thought, well, that's kind of how people see the trash industry, as something that's like a little hush hush. We don't really want to think about it because we're all kind of guilty of throwing stuff away. But I thought, well, what if I could take that and turn it into something good, something that's thriving, something that is opportunity. So I did that for my own business. I took, 3rd circle of hell and turned it into circle 3, which seems pretty benign. And that's what I like to do for my brands. I like to help them turn whatever their situation is into something that is positive and upbeat. So there was that literature nod that I liked and felt representative of my brand of turning garbage into treasure. And then there were 2 other business considerations. I could have named myself something very trash themed, but I thought, what if this is really successful and I want to sell it someday or get into a different industry? entirely. So if I went with something like the garbage girl, that would have pigeonholed me into just staying in the trash industry. Whereas if I do Circle 3 for some other type of product, then it's easy to make that division between the different types of services. And then kind of the last consideration was I've seen some brands get into trouble when they've named the industry after the founder, in terms of, that person does something, ends up in the news for a negative reason, and then the whole brand is trashed because it's tied to that person's last name. So, or, whatever it is that associates that founder with the brand. So I realized that's a branding risk for me now, and for anyone who's running this company in the future, to have it tied to Jessica Shrout. So I thought, let's do something that is separate from me, versatile enough that I could use it on a number of industries if I ever choose to do that, and something that's like a little fun, symbolic thing for me. So that's how I got there. I don't actually tell a lot of customers that because it's such a long story. And they think, oh, wow, you named us after a garbage dump that you read in some dusty old book. But to me, it has a lot of meaning of tying in what I went to school for and how I'm turning literature and writing and communication into a viable career for me now.
And I had asked that question earlier because I believe that people don't just name particular, if it's not their name, like you said, right? Or something generic like the garbage girl, then I'm always going to think that, somebody named their company that with some type of background, and that background is usually kind of correlates with their why, as to why they're doing the things that they're doing, or what their interests were, maybe as far back as childhood, or for you, like in college. Which kind of segues into my last question, which is, what is your big why? What is your rich state of mind? Why do you like to love to do what you do?
Yeah. Well, that's a really amazing question. And I don't know if it's ever solidified into something that is just a short statement on, I'm doing this because I love blah, blah, blah. But for me, it's been a journey of, I guess, freedom, really. I realized in my last corporate position that so much of what I was doing was based on the whims of, and I'm going to say this not in a negative way, it could have been women too, but based on the whims of men, that I was spending my whole career on the shoulders of these people. And that's a big gamble when your health insurance, your 401k, your everything, even where you live sometimes, is tied up in the decisions of people above you. And for many, that can be seen as comfort of like, I don't have to make these decisions. I just have to show up and do what I do, go home at the end of the day, not really worry about it. So I'm sure that's a comfort for a lot of people, but for me, it wasn't. For me, it was a stressor. What are they doing? Why are they doing this? This seems like a crazy decision. What's going to happen to me? And after a while, watching them, I would go up and ask them what books they were reading and create my own reading list based on what they told me. I was unconsciously doing like a mini MBA program by studying them. And by no means do I know what I'm talking about on that at all, but I was observing them and trying to understand what they were doing and why they were doing it. And I really didn't all the time. But after a while, I realized I could do that. I could be the one making the decisions. Like, I have what it takes. If I find the right resources, get the right education, I can be the person that makes these decisions. And I don't have to wait for them to promote me to that position. So
I love that.
In doing that, I've been able to travel. I've been able to make a speaking career for myself. I've met amazing people across the globe doing it. And all because I stopped trusting other people with my, financial and career success.
And
it's up to me. I mean, if I fail, it's all on me. But that's kind of a gamble that I am more comfortable taking.
I appreciate that you sharing that side of your thought process, because there are other people like that that feel that way. freedom, and we spoke a little bit about the millennials. Freedom has been like the focal point, and doing something that matters and feeling like you're a part of something bigger. And so you've definitely hit all those points. Where can people find you? Where can people find your website?
Ooh, well, they can go to circle3branding.com, and that's three all spelled out, not the number. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jessica Shrout. That's Shrout. And yeah, I think those are my only two really big public platforms, other than like personal social media stuff. My clientele seems to be focused more on LinkedIn. So that's where
Yeah,
you'll
that
have to
does
find.
sound like your demographic. As soon as you told me the industry, I was like, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
No,
Yep,
and
dealing with mostly
that's key
guys,
though.
yeah, of a certain age.
Yeah. That's your demographic is not on Snapchat and
Mhm.
TikTok.
Yeah. Oh, but I love TikTok. It's so much fun. It's such a creative platform, and I love watching what people are doing on that because eventually they will be my customers.
This is
So
true.
they're going to grow up someday and they're going to become the decision makers. So while I would advise businesses to focus on where their buyers are right now, don't sleep on the younger demographics. Watch them, learn them. That way you're not, in your 50s and 60s trying to figure out what these darn kids are up to. You
This is
kind
true.
of have embraced the culture too. So
This is true.
yeah.
Well, Jessica, it's definitely been a pleasure. I love your different take on branding and the niche that you have picked. This has definitely been a first, and because you're episode 51. So after 50 episodes, definitely got something. It's refreshing to know I'm still getting new, fresh content that people have not heard from us yet. So this is pretty dope, Jessica. Thank you. I hope people, because I'm going to put the link to your website and all your contact information on the description. So I want people to reach out to you, maybe in your area that need your assistance, or
Yeah.
maybe you may end up doing some type of consulting, you know.
And I love to advise new business owners because it is a challenge, but it's not as hard as you think. And there are people out there willing to help you. So, you got a quick question, please reach out.
Awesome.